The other day, I got onto Reddit to see on the front page the news that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are now the lowest ranking games in the series on Metacritic, and I was surprised by that. Personally, I wouldn't call Scarlet and Violet the worst mainline games in the series, and in my hands I wouldn't give it the 3.7 users are giving it. And I guess I just felt compelled to share my thoughts on these games. Originally, I was gonna go through a bunch of these reviews and discuss the point they make, or at least try to make, to find the bad that prompted this score, but after some thought, I'd much rather just share my opinion on the matter, and not make this a little fight, you know? I think it's important to discuss both the pros and cons of something when reviewing it, so let's start with the cons. Here is a list of bugs / technical issues / performance issues I encountered during my playthrough of Pokemon Violet. Sometimes the camera will put itself too low and we can just see through the ground. This should be patched. Sometimes when entering combat in a shadowy area, the UI for the menu will make shadows disappear, which is pretty immersion breaking. In general, the shadows are the thing that is the most scuffed in terms of the visuals, being the thing that has the most pop-in and such. When it's a distant hill in a cutscene that has wonky shadows, that's whatever, but the menu thing should definitely be fixed as soon as possible. I couldn't get any footage of this, but sometimes a Pokeball will just be loaded in at the door of a location, most easily seen inside buildings. You can't interact with it, and clearly it's not meant to be there, and I'd like for that to be patched. While on picnics, the dishes holding ingredients almost always have their bottoms wig out and stutter through the tablecloth. In the long run, it doesn't affect anything, but it is pretty ugly, and it should be fixed. Perhaps the most interesting bug I encountered, which again I don't have footage of, was when I fought the champion. Larry was just also there, on the sidelines behind me, like my own personal support system. He wasn't like T-posing or anything, like he looked fine, but no one acknowledged him and he didn't say anything, so I don't think he was supposed to be there. Honestly, that's the kind of bug I don't mind at all, it's hilarious. I've heard that people have had the game crash on them, and that there was a glitch where the music didn't play during the Elite Four for some. I didn't have any issues in those regards, but those are things that should be looked at. Pretty sure they already patched the music one, so good. The game does have some frame rate issues, most notably in cities, which luckily you're spending most of your time running around in the wilderness anyway. I did encounter some pretty chunky lag while in the Tag Tree Thicket, the area with the bamboo, and the most northern flower field, and while I hadn't had any problems with it, my roommate says that Lake Casaroya struggled a lot for her when she first went there, but then subsequent visits to the lake she didn't have any issues, so I don't know. Optimizing it definitely can't hurt. The chunkiest part of the whole game is probably Brassius's gym challenge, seeing you get a bunch of Pokemon to follow you in a town. Doing that challenge, I can practically hear my Switch kick into overdrive. Luckily, it's a bit of an outlier, and the majority of the game runs significantly smoother than that. Violet and Scarlet seem to be really pushing the system with how many things they have loaded in all at once, and generally speaking, I'm impressed with how well it actually holds up, especially while zooming around at top speeds, which sounds like a decent way to jump into the pros of the game, from my perspective anyway. 103 new Pokemon and lots of fun new type combinations with them is great. There's plenty of variety and interesting new movesets and designs across them that you're sure to like some of them. And even if you do hate every single new Pokemon introduced, there's plenty of returning favorites as well for you to collect on your adventure. Combat feels snappier, turns don't take as long with animations for moves being streamlined enough to help battles from feeling like they're dragging without losing the impact of those moves, especially in late game. The terastallizing crowns can look pretty goofy, but the light effect from them is very pretty, and of the gimmicks Game Freaks has introduced, I think this is the best one. Mega Evolutions were really hype and cool, but the fact that every Pokemon can terastallize, and that it can happen anywhere, unlike Dynamax, makes it a fun addition to combat. I'd like to see it return in future games. The fact that you get the bike right off the bat is amazing. This is a large world with this level of speed and mobility in mind. I'm glad I don't have to wait until I get 3 badges or whatever to unlock moving at a decent pace for this game. I'm also always impressed that there are no loading screens when you enter a town or a cave. The whole world feels connected, even when zipping about. It really makes the Paldea region feel like a place, rather than like a video game level like how we'd seen with previous games' routes. I love that you have to talk to trainers to initiate battle now. I don't like doing trainer battles and would much rather just fight wild Pokemon, and now I don't have to do that thing we've all done, where you sneak around to try and avoid their gaze. But for those who do like the trainer battles, there's still plenty to fight, and you have an extra incentive to engage with the other trainers in each area, since this well-dressed man at the Poke Centers give you rewards for fighting them. It's a real win-win. The 3 different challenges to tackle on your adventure, gym battles, fighting Team Star, and Titan Pokemon, are all unique, yet fun ways to get you to fight more Pokemon. Each one feels fleshed out and helps the game from feeling stale. And hands down, I think the writing in this game is great. No more Team Rocket, being evil is fun shit. Like, listen, the writing in the games has never been Pokemon's strong suit, but they've really nailed it here. I was interested in the different stories and characters the whole way through, not just because I wanted to get the good Pokemon at the end of the game, but because everything was written in a way that made me care. Arven's story got me to tear up, and I actually cried a little at the end of the game. In a world where I'm used to Pokemon characters being pretty two-dimensional even at the best of times, I'm thoroughly impressed by this jump in quality going into Scarlet and Violet. So that's my thoughts on the games. I don't really like placing a number into a review. It feels unhelpful, really. I want to know what the good and bad points are in a product, not number out of 10, you decide if that's good enough. But like I said, I don't really think I'd be giving the games a 3.7 if I were to slap a number on it. I want to make it clear that the game does have problems. No one is denying that. But remember, the whole thing that sent me on this journey was to find the bad that prompted people to give it the lowest Metacritic score for the series. And to that end, I want to say that if there's anything I've learned in my many years of making reviews on YouTube, it's that anyone can make a review. Literally anyone at all. On Metacritic, you don't need to beat or even play a game to give it a score. You can say whatever you want to justify your review. For example, there's this review I found. 0 out of 10, abandoning the precious and unique art style of Pokemon in exchange for a large number of bugs and errors, large number of blacks, ugly, cheap characters, and it is difficult to distinguish the gender of the characters catering to the politically correct Pokemon world. This racist bigot was able to leave their score, and it counts as just as valid as any other on the page towards this game being the lowest ranking one on the site. Of course, it's not that this score is bloated by a bunch of shitheads who don't like that there are people of color in the game, rather that broadly speaking, it's hard to put much value in a score that does have no curriculum to follow in regards to how it gets reviewed. It's also hard to take this score seriously when the online Pokemon community notoriously hates every new game in the franchise because it isn't just Red version again. Makes me wonder if they all remember how fucking busted those games were. Like, look at this review for Fire Red. 10 out of 10. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Pokemon. None of that black and white games BS. This is what Pokemon is and holds. Although the originals is what started it for me, this game brought back many memories and warmed my heart up. It's really a shame where the Pokemon franchise has now gone. It's just milked for money and no different than Call of Duty. This is a great way to relive the past with some added bonuses. A must-buy for any Pokemon fan. Period. Since they were the most recent games at the time, Black and White are used here as the example of Pokemon being bad. Ask people today and they'll say it's one of the good ones. The community pulls random elements to justify calling every new game in the franchise the worst one. Things like, there are too many bipedal Pokemon, even though there have been tons of those since Kanto. Or, too many gym leaders use 3 or fewer Pokemon in these newer games, when Paldea has fewer leaders like that than almost every other region. When do we stop nebulously accusing all of the new games of invisible problems and start just actually judging each game as an individual product, like how they are? If you ask me, the games in the series that deserve the lowest score are either X and Y or Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. I'm downright shocked to see their scores so high, but what's even more surprising is to see how much higher their scores are to Sword and Shield. Even without all the technical issues that plagues Scarlet and Violet, you'll find many very similar complaints on Sword and Shield's page. I don't like the graphics. I don't like the new Pokemon. It's unfinished. I wish the entire Pokedex was here so I can catch Caterpie for the 8th time. So let's wrap up my thoughts here. At the end of the day, Scarlet and Violet didn't have as much development time as they should have. Anyone can make a review, and it's up to you to decide if you value them as a source, and that Pokemon Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet have been ranked lower than even the Let's Go games on Metacritic. And after all of that, I still had a lot of fun with this game, and I recommend you check it out.
What you say? I said whoever threw that paper, your mom's a hoe.
So here's my house, right?
Yeah.
And this is the gas station. These are about a mile apart. You following me?
Yeah, I got
Okay. So the average male walks about 5 miles per hour. So why is it that it's taking my dad 15 years to come back from the gas station?